Welcome to another episode of The Jew and the Gentile. I'm Pastor Samuel, one of your hosts, and this is Jesse Reckelberg,
Peace out.
our amazing elder, one of our amazing elders. Not the elder. That makes it sound weird.
Very weird.
That's like slightly cultish. That's not what we're about. It sounds like a movie, The Elder.
Yes, I was just going to say. As long as I get a big staff, I'm good.
It's like the sequel to, what's that movie Dan loves?
Lord of the Rings?
No, the one where they're in that compound and it's fake. The ones we don't speak of. What is that one? Blanking.
The Village.
The Village.
The Village.
Sounds like a sequel to The Village.
Yes, The Village
Elder.
too.
Anyway, we digress. So, today, the subject we are going to retackle actually, because we recorded one already
A couple weeks ago.
a couple weeks ago, but it didn't record correctly. So this is a retake, hopefully with double the benefits.
This will be better.
Yeah. So we are tackling the subject of self-love. 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 And how the world looks at it, and how the church looks at it. And maybe we'll get into how religion looks at it, as sometimes we do. But it's a really important subject, I think, that we need to be talking about because the world's definition of it is getting more and more tainted. More and more, I would say, self-destructive in that it's just getting to the point of selfishness. And I really hate using this word because
Use it.
it's like being overused.
It's a big N word.
Yeah, but it's getting to the point of just like narcissism. It's like clinically making so many narcissists. And I hate using it because now that term is becoming like the term self-love. It's just like being thrown around there like every 5 seconds, and everybody's just, you're just toxic and you're a narcissist. I'm just going to cut you out of my life. And
So they create this problem.
yeah, so they're creating this problem, and then
they're like complaining about the problem.
Right.
It's funny.
which, yeah,
Typically how the world works now.
typically how it works. I mean, which is also, okay, if you need therapy, get therapy. Totally get therapy. But find a good therapist because, honestly, this is a business transaction. If I'm a therapist, I don't want you exactly to be better.
True. And I think the best therapist will actually challenge you and actually offend you.
Yes.
And, Jordan Peterson, the clinical psychologist, he will actually tell you if you are not being challenged, you're not getting help.
Yeah.
You're not getting help at all. All they're doing is placating you.
Yeah.
And I think that is the biggest issue with this whole self-love thing.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. And so it's seeping its way into the church, and I have mixed feelings about it because for the most part, religion looks at that whole idea, and religion it vilifies you, where you can never actually win because you're not holy, you're not worthy. That's true, but they then don't get to the fact that Jesus made you that way. It makes you worthy, makes you
Right.
worthy in all of those things, and that he did die for you because he does love you. So you are worth something. You are worth being loved. So this whole idea of self-love on both spectrums is very destructive if you don't actually have the right definition and the right motive for it. So let's dive into it.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. So self-love. How does the world look at it? Obviously, we see more gym rats than we've ever seen.
Yeah.
It probably in the history of working out. It used to be Venice Beach, California, and that was like gym rat central, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then you had the few clubs here and there, maybe one or two per city, but now you're looking at everywhere. So you see You see that. You see a lot of self-help videos.
Yep.
Uh, how to improve yourself, how to talk better, how to, whatever the situation is you have
Right.
this ability to, whatever avenue you want to go, you have this ability to make yourself better.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a faulty mindset right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Because you'll never be good enough.
Right.
That's the thing
Oh.
that's the thing that they'll never tell you.
Yes.
Is you're never going to be beautiful enough. You're never going to have enough makeup.
Yeah.
You're never going to have the best body.
I'm enough the
Right.
way I am.
Right. And then they throw that at you.
They throw that. I'm beautiful just how I am. I am enough how I am. No, you're not.
No.
You're not perfect. You're not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they say that I'm perfect the way I am. No, you're not.
No.
Ask anyone who is honest.
Mm-hmm.
And it's then. So then it gets to be this very destructive force of self-affirmation.
Right.
That is affirming all the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this, right?
Right.
Okay, and I'm not saying this because I want to shame anybody or saying, that I'm not overtly trying to offend. I'm trying to point out the actual danger and how far and perverse it's going.
Right.
Like being overweight is now being championed to the point where, like, it's not just that you're a little overweight. It's not that you struggle with your weight, or like, oh, I'm just, I love this food or whatever. It's like these people are like hundreds and hundreds of pounds over.
And being celebrated.
And being celebrated and being like, this is a welcome to an interrupted segment of our podcast. We wanted to delve in a little bit on this subject of obesity and being overweight, because we wanted to make sure that we were very clear. We are not shaming anybody. We are not saying that if you struggle with your weight, if you're a little bit overweight, if that's something that you struggle with in your life, we are not body shaming you. We are not saying that you are not beautiful. Society swings pendulums, right?
Yes.
20, 30 years ago, it was super prevalent to body shame people. And if you don't look like Barbie, you're not beautiful.
Exactly.
And that's just not true. And all truth is held in tension, right? So,
right. The whole Venice Beach thing,
right?
People lifting weights on the beach, that started in the 70s,
yes.
80s.
Yeah.
And then, just this whole thought process.
Yeah. So, we know this is a sensitive subject, but that is not our heart at all.
Right.
But so the pendulum has swung and is in the midst of swinging the other side. And that's why this was the perfect example for what we were discussing.
Right.
Obesity is an epidemic level right now in our country. 77% of our young people are ineligible to be in the U.S. military.
Right.
And 2 to 19-year-olds, 20% of them are clinically obese.
Right.
So that you're like, oh, that's only 20%. But then if you think of you walking down the street, 1 in 5 of those young people are obese.
That's pretty sad. Yeah.
And it's not just that they don't quote unquote look beautiful or look perfect. That's not the point.
Yeah,
the point is
talking about that.
The point is self-harm is on the rise. Depression is on the rise. Suicide is on the rise. All these mental health issues are on the rise. Disease is on the rise. They're dying of heart attacks and all diabetes and all this stuff, right? And so it's an actually huge issue. And this is not really what the podcast is about.
No.
But that's why I actually wanted to say that, like, this is not healthy and this is not good, and self-love is perpetuating this problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even just self-love, it's that we make it too easy for people today. Like we're cushioning it too much.
Right.
You know, I saw this video of kids in the 60s, and they're not one of them is struggling with that. And so it's not even just, you know, society's being more and more soft on children, not, you know, going outside, not eating right. Those are all factors, and they're completely valid. But it's also how our food is being made. It's how this, you know, what is actually in our food, what is easily accessible. So this has a ton of facets, and this is not a health podcast.
No, definitely.
So,
And in the, you know, ultimately our podcast is to juxtapose the world, religion, and then the kingdom.
right.
And the whole idea was to talk about how the world is making this
Yeah.
into an unhealthy thing.
Right.
And it's really interesting. I was thinking about this before we threw this together. We talked about how like Instagram and all those things are being, like obesity is being promoted, and that you're fine the way you are.
Yeah.
But yet, when you look at Hollywood, there is no one that's obese.
Right.
So the world kind of causes this confusion.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, like, you know, what's the message? Yes, it's good. No, it's good. And it's actually this confusion, and no wonder self-harm and all these things are on the rise.
Yeah.
It's because people actually don't know, and they actually don't know what real self-love is.
And they don't know what they don't like. They're pushing non-health,
Right.
and then people are wondering why they're not happy, right? And then, you know, this subject is so sensitive now. Like doctors aren't even being honest with patients, and being like, you are extremely overweight. This is dangerous. They're like sugarcoating the message to them, right? And so this is a very dangerous thing. It's actually, you know, I listened to some guys, and they're ex-military or whatever, but it's like actually a national security issue. This is how big it is. So, you know, let's just put the definition out there. Again, if you struggle with your weight, this is not what we're talking about. We're not judging.
Like I said earlier,
we're not saying
lose a few pounds.
Yeah,
I mean,
right? Like
we're not talking about that.
We're not body shaming. We're not out to say that you're not a beautiful person. And I think that we kind of made that point with Chris Farley. Like, there's so much more to people than their body, than their looks. Attraction, beauty is in the beholder, right? So, and God doesn't make ugly people, right? So that's not the point. But obesity is overweight and obesity are defined as abnormal or excessive fat accumulation that presents a risk to health. A body mass index, BMI, over 25 is considered overweight, and over 30 is obese.
Right.
The issue has grown to epidemic proportions, with over 4 million people dying each year as a result of being overweight or obese. That was in 2017. So that's a while ago. That's 6 years ago. A lot's happened since 2017.
Well, I mean, COVID hit, and I can't imagine how obesity is on the rise. Basically, you're stuck at home.
Yes. And
you couldn't even exercise in some cities.
Yeah. So rates of overweight and obesity continue to grow in adults and children. From 1975 to 2016, the prevalence of overweight or obese children and adolescents aged 5 to 19 years increased more than fourfold, from 4% to 18% globally. So this isn't even just an American problem.
No.
And so it's an issue that really does need to be addressed, because it has to do with your body, soul, and spirit, right? We can't separate those things. And you know, what is it? Overeating is a sin, right? Like that's gluttony. That's gluttony. That's not being.
It's not just eating,
and it's not just
gluttony can be in all different forms.
All kinds of forms, right? Yeah. But that's a clear indicator, right? That there's something going on, right?
Exactly.
You know,
and that's what the podcast is about.
Yes,
it's about
exactly.
Self-love. We're not talking about, you know, if you're comfortable with the way you are, awesome.
Right.
You know, whatever. You know, that's between you and the Lord, whatever. That doesn't matter. But the ultimately, what we're talking about is when we analyze self-love and we analyze the way the way the world does it,
Right.
it's been twisted.
Right. And are we promoting the right things?
Right.
You know, like if you struggle with your weight and you're like, yeah, I struggle with my weight.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
fair. Like, and no one's gonna judge you. But if you're 600 pounds and you're 5'8", you're my size, and you're like, yeah, you should live this way. It's actually, we're obligated to say, no, that's
not right.
That's not right.
Yeah.
And that's not a judgment on that person's
Right.
value. That's a statement because of their value.
Right. Because you love them.
Because I love them. Like, dude, you are harming yourself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and we're not advocating like, oh, everybody must exercise. Even Paul says in the Bible, you know, like what is, you know, and it does do good, but it's little good compared to the spiritual things. So ultimately, you know, exercise is good. That's a form of self-love, taking care of yourself.
Right.
But that you can be gluttonous in that also.
Yes, truth is in attention, right?
Right. You know, so like if you go and you spend 3 hours a day at the gym, you have a problem.
Right.
That's gluttonous in its own form.
Right.
It's a completely different form, and it's a form of pride.
It's a pendulum swing,
yes,
right?
Yes, exactly. So again, there we go. There's the other side of the spectrum.
Yes.
You know, it's not an attack on people that are that at all. So.
And I mean, to be honest with you, like this whole body shaming thing, people don't think skinny people experience that.
Oh yeah, yeah, true.
I've experienced that because I'm just not big. I'm not a big person. I'm not bulky. Mm-hmm. I could try really, really hard to get bulky, but that's a ton of work. I would have to probably for a while do 3 hours a day at the gym, right? So, you know, don't just please don't go to the just jump to a fence, because that's not the point of it. And there's all kinds, you know, there's all kinds of bodies. There's all kinds of issues that people have. And so please don't assume that our heart is to be fat shaming people. Yeah, that is not the point.
Fun or any of that kind of stuff.
It was just one of the extreme examples of where self-love is taking people. And if you do look it up, it is at an actual epidemic level that's really affecting our young people. Specifically,
the country.
It's affecting, but specifically, you know, I'm the youth pastor. I do youth stuff here. It's really affecting young people's ability just to function, and have a healthy life.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So that's why I'm really passionate about it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
You know,
So back to your regular programming. Then it gets to be this very destructive force of self-affirmation,
right,
that is affirming all the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this, right?
Right.
Okay, and I'm not saying this because I want to shame anybody or saying, you know, like that I'm not overtly trying to offend. I'm trying to point out the actual danger and how far and perverse it's going.
Right.
Like being overweight is now being championed to the point where, like, it's not just that you're a little overweight. It's not that you struggle with your weight, or like, oh, I'm just, you know, I love this food or whatever. It's like these people are like hundreds and hundreds of pounds over.
And being celebrated.
And being celebrated and being like, this is amazing. I am beautiful. Like, okay, like women models. And I put quotations because never in history has this been an okay thing, right? Like, okay, yeah. Jordan Peterson actually got a lot of heat for saying, no, that's not beautiful.
No.
Like, nobody thinks that. And he quoted scientific findings, like scientific proof. Like, he's like, no.
No one's attracted
to that. And yet you see...
I hate to say it like that. That sounds terrible, but...
But it's true, right? And so we see, I see this on Instagram all the time, where like all of these companies and all of these are like being quote unquote inclusive, and they have these plus size. I'm like, this is not just plus size. Like this is like extra, extra, extra large. And I'm like, this is not healthy. We are championing people into their disease and death.
Right.
Right. And we're in all in the name of self-love. And like, you shouldn't love that part of yourself. That is a destructive part of yourself.
Absolutely.
That should not be. Right. Like that's just not living in a controlled way. Like, I like treats. I like donuts. I love donuts, man.
Donuts, Pershing.
Donuts, pie, like, it's really
soda.
It's
soda
really,
is so destructive, but
oh yeah,
I would drink
yeah.
soda every day, all day, but I don't drink it at all because
Right.
I know it's not good for me.
Same, and so like, yeah, I'll have a donut every once in a while or whatever, but it's like, okay, if I was all of a sudden I gained like a ton of weight, and you notice, you wouldn't be like, hey man, you looking good.
No.
And this is also the weird thing for me is that, okay, so you see on Instagram, like you see these really obese women in these really like awkwardly sexual bathing suits.
Right.
And they're like, I'm beautiful and all this. I'm like, this is gross in every way possible.
Right.
Not only what my eyes are seeing, but what the attitude that it's portraying and the destructive nature of it.
Exactly.
It's repulsive. I don't see dudes doing this. Like, it's not something that's championed by men. It's not like, oh yeah, man.
No, and if you do see a guy wearing a bathing suit and that they're pretty overweight, actually, to be honest with you, it's in some sort of comedic fashion.
Yeah.
Like they're making fun of themselves over the situation.
Right.
Because, anyways, I'll stop there.
Yeah. Like,
Chris Farley?
Yes, him. Chris Farley. Like, everybody loves Chris Farley.
Everybody.
Right? Everybody loves him. But it's not because he's like the picture of a masculine, beautiful body.
No.
It's because he's hilarious.
Right.
And he's funny and he's fun to be around. And you like.
And he pokes fun at his
And he pokes, yeah.
all the time.
And he himself would be like, yeah, man, I know people don't like me for my body.
Right.
he would say that, right?
Like fat man and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So this whole self-love thing in the world is going so far that it's actually becoming a clinical term called narcissism.
Yes, I would actually classify it as more as neuroticism, because we've taken this whole thing and we've beautified all the weird and absolute things that we've disdained over 100 years ago, and we've actually elevated them to this point that we've actually become crazy.
Yes,
we've actually we've actually lost ourselves somewhere in the mix.
Yeah,
we don't actually know. Everybody knows that being overweight, I mean, I could lose a few pounds myself, but everybody knows that being overweight is not healthy.
Right.
You're not going to live to 100.
Right.
If you're 300 plus pounds. I mean, you're just not.
Right.
I mean, you're not going to live to 100 if you're sucking down donuts every other day.
Yep.
You might be 110 pounds sopping wet, but if you're sucking down donuts, you're going to eventually get diabetes or heart disease or some sort of weird thing.
Yep.
And it goes the same with, and that's not just your health, but talking about other things too.
Yeah.
What are you feeding yourself with as far as TV and whatever the situation?
Or even your actions, like, oh yeah, well, I need this time because I need it's self-love. Yeah. Right? I think we got into this the first time, right?
I think we did.
We did.
I'm trying to remember
like how much time this like culture is needing for this self-love. Like it's getting more and more time, and you're managing young people, and they need more and more time.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can't work 40 hours because
they're about 25 hours a week.
They need time for themselves. So you need 15 hours a week for yourself.
The most frustrating thing about that is, and something that I deal with on a regular basis, they want me to schedule them 40, but they refuse to work over 25. So they want the idea that they're a full-time employee,
right?
But they for some reason something happens every single schedule where they don't fulfill the 40 hours, and it's like, well, I need time to, whatever the situation is.
They want the badge, but without the responsibility. Yes, basically, they want the title, and they want to. Yeah, that was my experience, my short time managing people. Is that they want the title and they want the badge, but they're like, oh, I can't handle this. And it's like, and it's okay. So like, I saw this the other day. Well, my wife Rachel and I were talking about it, and it's like the idea, this whole self-love idea, is even creeping into how people are deciding to build their family, and it's like it's become like this excuse to like only have so many kids or whatever. It's like, okay, well, we just knew 2 was our capacity or whatever. Right. It's like, that's so incredibly like, how selfish that sounds. Yeah, like, exactly. Not only is it selfish in the idea that now, okay, 2 is my capacity, any more is going to get in the way of what? You, exactly. Basically, it's you. So your selfishness is getting in the way of something beautiful. And then the idea of like, okay, it's too much for my capacity. I don't think you understand. I don't think people are realizing capacity. You're supposed to steward that and grow it. Exactly. So like your self-love time, okay, maybe you were in a super traumatic, abusive, you have so much trauma. You need to take some time. You need to have a season of getting yourself right and receiving love and getting that self-love correct, right? Mm-hmm. Great. You're supposed to grow. You're supposed to grow your capacity. Like, if you're needing that much self-love, like, what is going on?
Yes, you mean not 30 years of trauma management?
Yeah.
Did I just say that? Ouch.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality of it.
That's the reality.
I mean, I hate to say that. I mean, I'm sure that'll offend some people, but there is a reality to when will you realize that if you're not growing, if you're not healing, you're doing something wrong.
Right. But that's really, it's so true. And I'm sure there's people of all generations, right, that need to hear that. But for the most part, it's the young, like my generation and younger, need to hear this because they don't even have enough years to have 30 years of trauma.
True, exactly.
And yet they're wanting 15 hours a week of self-love time because life is just so hard for me. Right? Like I can't take the anxiety, I can't take the pace. It's just too much. It's like for what, man? Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? And so it's gone so, the pendulum has gone so far, and all these kids, it's really, it's really sad because in a way they are a victim of like everyone gets a trophy thing.
I mean, it definitely starts there. I mean, to be honest with you, as someone who has children in their 20s, when it happens, when your kids are in the soccer and they get the trophy, you're like, oh, cool. Yeah. Internally, something's wrong. Yeah. But you still participate in it. So I'm actually to blame for that,
Yeah, right.
But, or I played my part in it, so to speak.
Right.
But it is a sad situation.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm second place.
Yeah. Second place. If you want to go by the Navy SEALs, that's first loser.
First loser. Exactly.
It pays to win, man. It pays to win.
Yes. Yeah, actually, it's really funny when you're talking about that and just about how all the different situations in the world where, the whole self-love thing. You ever watch J.P. Sears?
Yes. So funny.
He is probably my favorite to watch.
He came to Jesus. Did you know that?
Yes, I did. I know. I saw he said I was wrong about God.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah, exactly.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah, and it's so funny because he he really attacks the idea of this whole like premise of just that it's constant, consistent self-love.
Yeah.
That's what you're all about.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Check him out, JP Sears.
He's hilarious.
Purple shirt, you'll know you have him.
Yeah. Ginger, long ginger hair.
Yes.
He's so funny. But yeah, and so now, and I've seen it being grown a little bit over the years, and I think this is actually the root of what people call the hyper grace movement, which I really hate the title hyper grace, because that's literally the definition of grace.
Right.
That it's super abounding. So it's hyper. It's gonna overlap you. It's gonna do anything. That's the definition of grace.
Yeah, I think that is actually a discussion for one time. We have to put that on our docket because I think there's a total misunderstanding what grace is. What
Yes.
the world looks like grace.
Right.
But anyways.
Right.
And you hit on it with your sermon, but
Yeah.
I think there's so much more on
Oh,
that.
totally. Yes.
Anyways.
But the root of, well, okay, so the term hyper grace, throw it away. If you like it, I'm sorry, I hate it. It's actually, it goes against the biblical meaning of grace in actuality. But Dietrich Bonhoeffer has the best definition of what they are trying to say, and it is cheap grace. People receive Jesus, and then if they do whatever they want, they're cheapening the grace that God gave them. And I think that is actually a better definition of what you're trying to say.
Right.
Hyper grace is like, that's actually a good thing.
Right.
That's the definition of grace. That's what Paul says. Super abounding. That's the definition. But when people are quote unquote in that hyper grace movement or whatever, no, it's cheap grace. If you think you can do whatever you want after receiving grace, then you're cheapening what God gave you.
I think I'm missing. How are you applying this to this?
What I'm saying is, here's what I'm getting at. Okay.
So
I think the root of it, I think the root of this hyper grace thing is self-love.
Oh.
Because like I've seen it happen where, okay, you confront somebody who just sinned, right? And then you're like, hey, you can't be doing this. Like this is this is not how Christian. You can't be a Christian and do this. Like you need to repent, and the person will be like, no, I mean, I'm okay. I'm
under grace, man.
Yeah, I'm under grace. I don't feel any shame. Excuse me, what? Like you just slept around with somebody, and you should feel shameful about that. You should feel shame, and you do need to feel bad about that and repent.
Right.
You did something bad, you should feel bad, right? But it's been tainted, I think, looking through the past years of this whole like self-love thing, because what self-love, the Christian version, okay, what they're trying to do is apply God's grace and say, okay, speak to your identity of who you actually are, and you will be empowered. Truth.
Right.
But it comes after repentance.
Right.
So they're trying to skip that in the name of self-love and be empowered, but they haven't repented from what they need to be empowered to leave. So it's destructive in the Christian world because people are like cheapening grace and leaving repentance behind and being like, I can do whatever, like it doesn't really matter. God loves me just the way I am. God loves me just the way I am.
Right.
That's true. He does love you, but he wants you to become the version of you should be, the one he created.
Right. And when you look at grace too, well, since we're unpacking this as far as grace is concerned, we forget that it's not just this flowing, we got all this grace and we can just do whatever we want.
Right.
Jesus grew in grace and favor.
Mm-hmm.
If Jesus can grow in grace, I guess that means I can too.
with God and man.
Mm-hmm. Right. So
That
what does
blows
that
my
tell
mind.
you? There is some. We've got work to do.
Yeah,
We are not perfect.
we're not perfect.
We're not allowed to sit there and say I'm okay the way I am. And
Yeah.
This is the way God made me. So
Yes.
I can do this sin and this sin and this sin.
Yeah.
And, this is just the way I am.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
I'll leave it.
Yeah.
It's just the
Right.
way it is.
And then it goes into it gets more and more destructive than just that with this whole self-love thing, because the motivation is actually right for the world in honesty is self-medication, right, because we're not actually doing anything other than medicating. We're not healing, right? We're not getting better. We're just, because the time isn't getting shorter and shorter, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand this whole 15 hours a week of loving yourself. I don't get that, right?
I wish.
Right? Like, that would be cool. But the motivation is self-medication.
Right.
Because
Pain killing.
Right, pain killing, avoiding things, avoiding stress, avoiding anxiety, avoiding this, right? And so Christians, we're like, well, I don't want to do that, and I'm gonna love myself and know what I can do and what I can't do, and those are great, right? Until the truth of it is, if you're so you're again self-medicating instead of growing your capacity, growing it. And so when the church is adopting self-love, which is self-medication, we're medicating the self that needs to die. Right? And we're not becoming who God created us to be. We're not partnering with our new nature. And so a lot of this whole self-love and psychology and all of this stuff is like so much centered on the self and so much centered on your preferences and on your personality and all of this stuff. Like, oh, well, you're just not made for that. It's like, don't worry about it.
Right.
It's like, oh, maybe, you know what? Oh, you're not liking that job? Yeah, it's toxic anyway. Just
time to leave.
Just time to leave. Time to pull the cord. Oh, you're not liking that church? You know what? They're not loving you how you need to be loved. Just go to another church.
They've offended me.
They offended me. You know what? I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. I need to love myself and go to the right places that loves me, the real me.
Yes.
And so, listen, I'm all about knowing yourself, knowing what you need. But the motivation behind that is the real reason that you need to love yourself is so that you can love your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
And so if you have a hard time loving your neighbor, you're actually having a hard time loving yourself and receiving love from the Father. And I've seen that play out.
Yeah. It's interesting too, though, I think Christianity in general can take that and swing that notion too far also, because, I mean, let's just be real. Everybody loves themselves to some extent.
Right.
So is that implied when Jesus says that, right? Your neighbor as yourself. Is that implied in the message to love people how you love yourself right now, and as you grow in that, you will grow in your own self-love and you'll be able to. So the problem is most people, they don't realize that A, you need work, and B, you need to love yourself. So it's kind of, they work hand in hand.
Yes.
It's like a back and forth.
Yeah.
It's a constant struggle. And I think being self-aware is very important, but I think we need to understand that we already do love ourselves, that you do have the ability to love your neighbor.
Right.
Maybe not perfectly.
Right.
Let's say you're going through an issue with your spouse or something like that. as you learn this, there's going to be hiccups.
Yep.
There's going to be hiccups in that whole thought process, but you'll come to the realization that, wait a minute here, that I didn't say that correctly. Maybe I don't love myself in this area. I need to analyze that and say, God, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest trip up for a lot of Christians is because they'll stop and say, okay, I'm not going to love anybody right now,
Right.
until I 100% love myself.
Right.
And I think there's a danger in that too.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Because then we're all just kind of camping on ourselves, and it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. And that's really how it should work. And so the whole motivation behind, self-love, quote unquote self-love, is that I am guarding and protecting the ability to love others.
Right.
My capacity to love other people. Mm-hmm. And so, my whole motivation behind having time for myself isn't that I get to have time for myself.
Right. It's not a selfish motive.
It's not a selfish motive. It's actually, I just need a minute. I need to take a little bit of time, read my Bible, just check in.
Something's off.
Because I'm like, I need some me time.
Yeah.
Figure myself out so I can love my family better.
Right.
This is my dialogue inside.
Yes.
Right.
And it's the same here. I've done this dialogue
yes.
numerous times.
Yes.
Numerous times.
It's like, wow, I'm really not patient right now. This, I need to go take a minute, and it isn't so that I can just continually. I'm not I just want 15 hours to myself because I'm worth it. It's like, well, okay, there's truth to the fact that I'm worth the 15 hours.
Right.
Right? There might be a time and a space where that's needed, and that's correct. Mm-hmm. But 15 hours a week, I have 2 kids and a wife in a church that I'm responsible for. Yeah. That's not a realistic expectation, right? Mm-hmm. And that's so. Having that dialogue, having the reason, the whole motivation is that I'm growing my capacity to continually be loving other people. Mm-hmm. And so creating, boundaries around certain things so that I can do that, right? So I carve out time, at least 1 hour a day that I'm reading my Bible and reading a book that I call it disciple time, where Jesus, you can speak to me, disciple me,
right?
Whatever. And when I do that, it's really, I think we talked about this before, but it's really weird how much more capacity and how much more things I get done when we put the things first that need to be first.
Right.
So for me, self-love has changed a lot actually to being more of
putting things in order.
Yes, putting things in order, like prayer on Tuesdays,
yes.
I mentioned it in the sermon on Sunday, but when we started doing that, something just shifted in my whole being. Something shifted for my whole life.
I think something shifted in the entire church.
I think so too.
To be honest.
And it's because for me, it's actually part of my self-love.
Absolutely.
It's I don't want to wake up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. actually. Not that I did today, but
for me it's 5:15 because I had a half.
But it's actually a part of my self-love to come to prayer,
right,
and be with the Lord, pray to Jesus with a bunch of guys, and see what the Lord does.
Right.
And the rest of my day is so much different. Actually, the rest of my week is different because I'm putting the right things first. And so I'm not feeling the need of all of this quantity of time when I have the quality and purpose of those things that are really what Christians should be doing, right?
Yeah.
Because I I love video games. I love working out. I love guns. I have all these passions that I'm like, oh, I want to get these things. I want to do these things. You know, I don't have time.
Right.
I never get me time to do these things.
Me time.
And when we put the things in order, not only I'm going to talk about myself. Not only do I feel the need, like the agitation that I need to do those things in order to feel right.
Right.
But I feel the need less to do them. But the ironic thing is, then because my attitude is shift, because my ability to love and to communicate love and be growing that capacity, those things actually become available to me.
Right. Yeah, with less time.
Yeah, with less time. Because, like, okay, well, I've been communicating well. I've been loving my kids well. Having a good time with everything, and so it's not a big deal that I play a video game or something, or go watch a gun video or whatever, because all of the things are going well already.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I think a lot of people they might know the statistic or not, but as a father, especially for somebody who's little, you have little ones.
Mm-hmm.
They did a study that if a father spends 20 minutes of super quality time with their child,
right,
the child is like, I don't know what the percentage is, so I'm not even going to try to quote them, but like there's a very low percentage drugs, alcohol,
right,
premarital sex, jail, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Now, let's remember that everything's in a shadow of things to come, right?
Yeah.
So if we spend quality time with our Father, what does that look like?
Yeah.
What happens to our life?
Right.
What drops away? How does that take care of ourselves?
Yeah.
It's,
totally.
It's bizarre.
And that checks, because I watched this video. This guy said just 18 minutes a day of doing one thing, and you do that every day, you'll eventually be better at that thing than anyone in the world. Like, you'll be an expert.
Minutes.
18 minutes,
yeah,
20 minutes.
Exactly.
And so, like, this whole, quality over quantity, and the motivation of where are you going? What is the source of your self-love? Because, okay, another aspect of this whole Christian self-love thing is like, okay, I just need more time with God. I need to be in the Bible more and be the. Yeah. Like, well, it doesn't seem to be working. Whatever you're doing isn't working. You're carving out all this time, but you're not becoming better to be around.
No.
Your capacity isn't growing. What is this whole thing? You're calling it being with the Lord, but are you just self-medicating?
No, it's like I said before. If it's not working,
right?
Like I said, 30 years of trauma therapy.
Right.
If it's not working, you need to change something.
Right. Exactly.
Something has to change.
Right.
So.
And you can't. It's really hard for me to believe that you're spending that much time with the Lord and things aren't changing for you. So, like, again, the whole we can spiritualize things. We can spiritualize even these amazing spiritual disciplines that we should be doing, and it's really self-medication.
Mm-hmm. I would have to agree with you.
Yeah, so it's like we have to be. The motivation behind our self-love is to guard and protect and grow our capacity to love other people, and we need to be sure of the source of self-love. What does that mean? It doesn't mean the source of my love for myself is purely me.
No. Actually, I was going to say something about that too. Like, our value does not come from us.
Right.
I heard, God, love Jordan Peterson. Like, not everybody can listen to him because he's very heady and he uses a lot of words that loses a lot.
I love him.
I do too.
He's one of the best Canadians.
But he's talking about this subject. I don't remember exactly what the title of it is, but he was saying that if your dog got sick,
yeah,
You would take it to the vet. The vet would prescribe medication.
Yeah.
You would take the dog home, and you would do what the vet says as far as the medication to make sure your dog got taken care of.
Right.
You know, if you got sick, you would go to the doctor. Do you know there's a 30% chance that you will not pick up the medication? And then there's another 50% chance that you will not take that medication according to its prescribed, let's say, like the time, or, you know what I mean? You're not actually, because most people don't actually understand their value. And because they don't understand their value, it's like there's this impossibility to actually love themselves.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so your dog, if your dog had enough choice, it would make sure that you
Right. Yep.
were medicated.
Yep.
Because they would say, hey, I love you that much. That's how much the dog loves you.
Right.
But you forget.
Yep.
You know, like people forget to brush their teeth, and they have rotten teeth, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what does it look like to understand the value that the Lord has put on you, the light that you bring into this world?
Yep.
Because everybody has a light.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty dim place, as Jordan Peterson says. It's a pretty dim place if you're not bringing the light.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so.
Yeah, I love Jordan Peterson. I could listen to him all the time.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Him, and I think like the way he thinks and articulates is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and another person is Jocko Willink.
Mm-hmm.
He has his cadence and the way he talks is just captivating.
Right.
I'm like, I could listen to you talk about toilet paper.
I like Simon Sinek too.
Oh, I don't know who that is.
Simon Sinek, yeah.
Well, I'll have to look him up.
Yeah, he's pretty good too. But yeah, ultimately though, you know, do you value yourself?
Yes.
Do you value, or do you see the value that it takes to love yourself?
Yes, and go to the right sources.
Right.
In order for you to have that capacity to really function and thrive in life. Mm-hmm. And that's really the point of self-love. It's like, okay, I know what I need in order to thrive in what I'm doing.
Right.
I need this, or I need this time for myself, not because I'm awesome, not because, you know, I'm perfect the way I am, because I'm not perfect the way I am.
No.
Because I need help. I need to work on myself in order that I'm the best husband I could be, in order that I'm the best father that I could be, in order that I'm the, you know, best pastor that I could be, whatever. You know, that is the main point. Instead of I need me time because I'm just overwhelmed. I have anxiety. I just need me time because you know, I have lots of trauma. It's like, okay, that's the wrong source.
Right, because it's not going to fix it.
It's not going to fix it.
All you're doing is you're placating it, putting it in the junk drawer.
Right.
Until tomorrow.
Yes, you're medicating the symptoms without getting to the actual problem. Exactly. And so you're spending time with a broken self. And so we all know people who are broken. Mm-hmm. And then we see them and it's super weird. And they get along, they find this person and they're like similar spirits or something, similar things. Yeah. And then they hang out together and they're both broken people. And then you see them just go
together.
Yeah, together. That's what happens when you're self-medicating in this self-love. You're just like, oh, I need to spend time with me. Actually, you don't need to spend time with you. You're broken and you're hurting and you're in a really bad spot. Like you're spending way too much time with a broken person.
Yeah. And the funny part is people who we all have things that we need to work on.
Yeah.
Some brokenness or whatever. But what we tend to do is the people who offend us the most are actually the ones we should stare at the most.
Yeah.
If you really want healing, if you really want to understand what's going on in as far as as far as self-love is concerned, the ones that really tick you off, those are the ones you should be really hyper analyzing and saying, wait a minute here, they have something about their persona that I'm either A, missing, or B, I don't understand, or
Yeah.
whatever the situation is, because I'm telling you, that's how you learn.
Right.
If they offend you, maybe you should be friends with them.
Yeah. Iron sharpens iron.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And because of self-love and because of we can go anywhere. We can cancel all of our friends today, go to a different spot and make new friends.
Sooner or later, they're going to offend you.
Sooner or later, they're going to offend you. And so we have people in the world who just stay the same, right? We got 40-year-olds in their mom's basement, right? Like, they're still playing the same video games, whatever, right? But we also have Christians who, because they have not been planted somewhere. I just saw this. Steph sent me this great Instagram video. It's like, we're just potted plants. And the great thing about being a potted plant is you could go to this place, and then you could just leave and go to this place, but you never grow roots. You're never actually going deep. You're never growing to your capacity. So we got these Christians who never grow fruit because they're in this pot. And a potted plant is stuck within that pot.
And the roots are constricted.
Yeah, it can't grow to how it's supposed to be. And so we got Christians who've constricted themselves for years, going from place to place to place, instead of getting sharpened, instead of getting, the actual value and love that they deserve, actual self-love. We have been placating our wounds. We've been placating our dysfunction,
right,
in the name of, well, I'm worth it.
Right. Yes. That's fake value.
It's fake value.
Yes.
It's like the guy who needs the big truck because he doesn't believe he's a man.
Hey, I have a truck. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but it's not that big. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
It's not lifted.
It's not lifted.
With 33s on them. No, I'm just
yeah.
or whatever they are.
Well, we all know those people.
Yes, we know.
Right, and so inevitably it's going wrong, and so then you have so this is where we get into boundaries. Then we have those
Which is next segment.
Same truck people, right? Basically, they just discovered boundaries. And so now they're going to be the big man and be like, well, I'm going to set this boundary here, and we're not going to, you can't interact with me this way because I love myself, and this is just not going to be okay. And
right.
And so then they get into this whole setting boundaries and self-love. Boundaries and self-love are completely connected. Because,
they're intertwined almost. Can I say this? Almost like lovers.
Yeah,
they really are.
Yes,
they are so connected. Two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Whatever situation you want to use.
How much have you heard this within the self-love conversation? I'm making this boundary with you because I need to love myself.
I can't even count that high. I would need to actually get a calculator, probably count that high.
Is it just exclusive to the world, or have you heard it just as much in the church or more? Like, I'm curious.
I would say it's pretty equal.
Okay.
For my.
That's what I was gonna.
For me, just
too.
in my own personal sphere, my own personal.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting how much of our issues are not even different. And the church isn't like seeing that. Mm-hmm. We should be a lot more different than we really are.
Oh yeah.
At this point.
Yeah, we always quote all these beautiful scriptures. Oh, we're a city down a hill. We're light in the darkness, and it's like,
yeah,
really, it's kind of not what I see.
Right.
I see really just a bunch of worldly people that go to a church.
Yeah.
And I got to retract that because my wife says we rip on Christians. But I think that's the point of the podcast, is to actually say, like, hey, wake up, church. We
right.
We should look different.
Yes.
We should look different. And sometimes that's not the case.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is kind of the point of the podcast, is to analyze the world, the church.
I'm just going to be honest with you too. I mean, here's a great example of this whole thing we're talking about. So There are 3 people in my life that have offended me more than anyone else. And in the process, I have discovered what self-love really looks like and my value in that.
Yeah.
And it's my wife and my 2 boys.
Yeah.
They have offended me more than anyone else ever.
Right.
I mean, it's a constant thing. And it's like, I can't run away from them.
Right.
So I actually have to I have to turn myself and look at what they're saying and hear what they're saying, no matter how hard
Yes.
it is, because I realize that I love myself enough to hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
Because they have value, I have value, and it's beautiful how quickly it works.
And a perspective on you that you can never have.
Yes.
And that is actually, so that goes back to the kids thing, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that's why, like, children are getting more and more devalued
Mhm.
in our society. It's just plainly, you can see
Yeah.
that, right? And having kids is becoming more and more devalued
Yeah.
because of that fact,
Right.
I think, because this whole self-love capacity thing is because, no. You don't like kids because they're just a complete reflection of everything you are, good, bad, ugly,
Unfiltered.
unfiltered.
They will just, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
did you just say what I think you said about me? Oh my goodness, what am I gonna do with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so people are like, oh, I only have capacity for 2. I'm like, okay, so for me, what you're saying is you don't like what you're seeing
Yeah.
and you can't deal with it. So you're
Yeah.
going to have 2 because you're at capacity of protecting yourself.
Right. It's so true. It's so true. So how do we love other people as we love ourselves? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. Healthy. So
Yes.
in a healthy way, we do need to have boundaries.
Yes.
On that book, Boundaries,
Which
look it up.
we'll talk about next
We'll
session.
talk about next session. But in a healthy way, with the motivation of actual self-love in order to grow capacity to love other people, to keep that going, to keep connection possible. That is what's needed to figure that out.
Mhm.
What is the actual time I need? What is the healthy amount of time that I need in order to have the capacity to keep loving people and growing that?
Right.
Right? Like, you should grow your capacity to love. As a believer, our capacity to love other people, our capacity to carry things, to have influence, to carry the Spirit of the Lord, favor with God and man, right? It should be growing. And that should be a part of the process of you having self-love, right?
Right.
That should be the fruit of that.
Mm-hmm.
The very reason. Not this whole, not the self-medication, the self-medicating thing. And so it is a type of journey.
Right. And it's interesting because when you brought up boundaries, another thing I was thinking of, because this whole thing is backwards, but
Yeah.
as far as boundaries is, if you really want to, if a person really wants to explore what real healthy boundaries, try boundaries on yourself first.
Yeah. Self-discipline.
Yes. I mean, that's essentially what self boundaries would be
Right.
classified. It would be self-discipline.
Yes.
Try boundaries on yourself first and those expectations that you have
Yes.
for others, see if you can do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't have those expectations, you can't handle your own expectations,
Yeah.
then they probably are unrealistic, unhealthy,
Yeah.
and just not good.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think when you really look at somebody who doesn't have boundaries, you'll also see that they're a pretty undisciplined person.
Right.
So that's a very good way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Start with yourself. Have boundaries with yourself. No, I'm not going to have 4 donuts
I'm just kidding.
because that's unhealthy,
Very.
right? Like, no, I'm not gonna have dessert every day of the week, or I'm not.
I'm not going to stay up till midnight watching
Yes.
a show and get up, and I have to get up, roll out of bed at 4:30
Yes.
in the morning for work.
Right.
Get some good sleep.
Yeah.
It's good for you.
Right.
Healthy people sleep at least 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
That's healthy people.
Yeah. No, I'm not gonna skip being working out or whatever.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to skip because I have value for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you can't keep your word to yourself,
Yeah.
you can't. This is what you're. I'm recapping what you say. If you can't keep your word for yourself, how can you expect somebody to keep your boundaries?
Right. And then as you learn how to self-discipline, you can expand those boundaries. I mean, you got some of these really successful people in this world. I mean, they're working 14 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And yet their motor burns so high.
Yes.
Because they've grown in grace.
Yeah.
They've grown in that.
Right.
They've totally understand who they are, their value, what they bring to the world.
Right.
And they love themselves for it, so that their motor just burns higher.
Yeah.
But you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, that's the big
thing. Jocko Willink has a book called, and a whole like idea, like a whole talk and theme, Discipline Equals Freedom.
Mm.
And I would like.
I think I've seen that.
Yeah.
I haven't. Yeah, I haven't read it, but I've seen the actual title.
Yes. And, you know, it's that exact idea. Like having healthy boundaries, having healthy discipline. And boundaries is just another way of saying discipline, right? Like it's a synonym of sorts. Like it has crossover. When you have healthy boundaries, it should bring freedom.
Right.
Where, you know, when people have an unhealthy idea of self-love and boundaries, it's not a freedom thing. No. It's a constricting thing. And the more and more it's eating away at your capacity, right? The more and more these employees are like, oh, well, I can't make it. I can't do it. Like, that's not freedom.
No.
What you're saying is that you're bound by this need.
Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, those people that work, let's use Donald Trump as an example. I mean, the guy works endless hours. He's ridiculous. That guy he's got so much freedom.
Right.
In his mind and his body and that kind of stuff. I mean, granted, he probably shouldn't eat 4 or 5 Big Macs or whatever he eats per day.
It's so gross.
It really is.
It's so nasty.
It's just like, okay, whatever. But anyways.
Why?
Okay, so maybe he needs some discipline in that area. But anyways, getting back to my point, is discipline equals freedom.
Right.
The guy, he works hard, and because of that, his mind is free.
Right.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And then you have people that I work with, customers also, that work the 15, 20, 25 hours a week, and they are in so much bondage.
Right.
Because they have no discipline. They have no...
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Right.
I never even put the connection together, but now that you say that, I'm like, huh, interesting.
Yeah. And they're the same type of people that really have bad boundaries. In reality.
Yes.
Right? Like with people and all these things. Like, you're not in a healthy space in your relationships. You're not in a good spot when, like, you share things you shouldn't share. You say things you shouldn't say.
Right.
You eat whatever you want. You sit around however long you want.
Right.
And it's like, that's cool. Like, that's not, scientifically speaking, you're just killing yourself.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I lost my job.
You're just waiting to die. So
Right, yeah. I lost my job and I went crazy, man. Like, because of COVID, I lost my job and I was just, I was like, okay, I'm going to use my time well. I tried. And even then, still went crazy.
Right.
It's like, I'm just like, especially a man, I'm not being sexist, but especially a man, they need to work. There's something about it, something within our DNA that is tied to our dignity, that we are working, we're doing what we need, we have a purpose, we're doing something.
Right. And that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. I mean, because granted, when my wife and I first got married and working at the restaurant, I worked a ton of hours.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking 60, 70 hours a week. Now I don't work as much, but, I'm meeting people here, going out and helping people there and doing these different things. And the days we don't have anything to do, we actually go stir crazy in the house.
Yeah.
Because we're like, we need stuff to do. Very seldom do we actually have a day where it's like,
Yeah.
with nothing to do.
Right.
So we can't. It's bizarre how that works out.
Yes.
And it's like, because we understand, like, hey, we have value. I want to make sure that
Right.
I give this value away.
Right.
Which we kind of
Totally.
talk about with money. So
Right. And I mean, that has a whole idea of like this whole like rest thing,
yeah,
right? Which is inevitably connected to the Christian idea of self-love. It's like,
right.
I just need to rest. Okay, yeah, yes, absolutely. Like, you do need to rest. That means different things for different people. That doesn't necessarily mean you do nothing. And it's
You don't get your blankie.
it's a season. Like, you should have a day of rest.
Oh, absolutely.
A day of rest. So, so I went to a ministry school.
I'm like, oh boy.
I went to ministry school, and then, like, one of the guys that I interacted with, when he was still in school, he was an intern with a pastor, and so then they had students underneath them, and so a lot of times, this idea of self-love and rest are connected, right? So people would come to school, and these young people, right? They're like 18. It's like, I'm just taking the year off. I'm just resting. He was like, what are you resting from? You actually need to have worked, done something to rest. You haven't done anything. How can you rest?
Right.
Don't tell me that. Like, you didn't do anything that you need a rest for.
It's infuriating. I'm just. It really is. It's infuriating.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, we've gotten. I say this a lot, and I'm not saying this just about Christians. I'm saying this about society. We're so soft. Humans, we've gotten so soft.
We're built to work.
Yes.
And actually, not that our value comes from work, but it's in our DNA to actually work.
Yeah.
And as we work, we actually feel good.
Yes, exactly.
You want to feel good? You want to have self-love?
You need to work. It's biblical. It's godly that you work.
Exactly.
I can't remember if it was this one that we past recorded or another one we did, but he never stops working.
Never stops. Well, yeah, but he's in, the seventh day rest.
Right.
Oh.
I mentioned this on Sunday, right? Where, like, Rachel often tells me, why don't you just relax? Why don't you just rest?
That's code, though. Wait, should I tell you that?
It's code.
It's
that
code
she needs attention.
That she needs rest.
Oh, well, yeah. She was going to have a nap.
So she wants to rest. So by telling you should rest, she won't feel bad that she's resting. That's husband.
Well, yeah, that's true. I know that. I always tell her, like, no, go have a nap. That's fine.
Yeah.
But it won't be restful for me if I go nap.
Yeah.
It just won't. I'll nap, I'll wake up, I'll feel groggy, and then I'll feel extra lazy.
Yep.
I'm going to go work out, and I will feel rest.
Yeah.
It's so.
You're gonna feel great.
I feel good. Like, my endorphins start going. Yep. I feel stronger. I feel better in my inner being, in my body, and then I'll be like.
But I think I told you this on Sunday. What they found out about naps.
Oh yeah.
That there's actually a correlation between naps and Alzheimer's.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Interesting.
Well, don't you think a nap would be self-love? Evidently not.
Evidently not.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't take a nap if you need to take a nap.
My question is, what constitutes a nap? Because I will doze off on the couch sporadically. I don't know.
I can't even watch TV anymore.
I know.
I sit down and so I don't even sit down until it's bedtime.
I know. Last night, Rachel and I were trying to watch an episode of Magnum P.I.
Oh, yeah.
Super great show. Super underrated for my generation and younger. Amazing TV. The 80s were great. But we both were like totally zonked out, and we were just like, let's just go to bed.
Yep.
But anyway, we digress. But the point is, rest doesn't mean you're constantly doing nothing, and it's a season, it's a day. You get a day of rest, and that might look different for different people. Like, for me, it's not exciting if today the plan is, okay, and it's not restful. It's not restful or exciting that the plan is we're going to have a nap.
Yeah. I always look at rest as a state of being.
Yes. And so again, for me,
Yeah.
like, okay, the idea that goes back to self-love, right?
Mm-hmm.
The point is that I feel rested in order that I can love other people well, right? I
Right.
do the things that I need to do in order for myself to have the capacity and the willingness and the joy to love other
Right.
people in my life. And so for me, that doesn't look like having a nap. For Rachel, that means I get to have a nap. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Take a nap.
go do it.
Exactly.
I'm going to go work out.
Right.
That's rest to me. That's self-love. And so,
That's awesome.
yeah. So it's an ongoing conversation, and it's an ongoing thing where it's like, okay, what is the requirements for me to hold the capacity of loving others well? It has to be, you have to go for quality, not quantity. You actually have to go and look and be realistic about what your boundaries are. And we'll go into boundaries that you're not making walls, you're making gates that are inviting. They're not like, never come in here.
Right.
It's like, okay, yeah, well, sir, no, you don't get to come in my apartment.
Throw some fists at me.
And yeah,
It's not going to work out that way.
That's not going to work.
You will get a 9mm.
Yes, exactly. Straight facts. But I will invite the people that are healthy, that I do want in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as the motivation behind your self-love is to love others well,
right,
you can't go wrong.
Right.
In making that source of self-love not only, you, but God, the source of all of your love, right, and that's connected. You should, then what's going to happen is you're going to grow your capacity to love. You're going to grow your capacity to thrive, and it's gonna amplify everything that you do.
Right.
To the point where you're like, it's gonna be insane.
Right.
Instead of licking our wounds and medicating our dysfunctions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know a lot of people too. They like to say that it sounds like a simple process, because it is.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, and if that's offensive to you, come talk to me. I'd love to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
But ultimately, when you start to understand, first of all, we all love ourselves to some extent.
Yeah.
Whether it's a little or a lot. If it's a lot, you typically are probably on the narcissistic schedule, so to speak. But most people are kind of in the middle of the road. We love each other. We like some things. We don't like some things, right? But we love each other. We love ourselves. So, but our real value comes from the Lord.
Right.
And when we understand what he did, why he did it, and who he really truly did it for, because he's the one who really knows who we were meant to be.
Right.
We have some idea, but if we start to understand, like, hey, he knows my complete value better than I do, and if I just tap into that, it's really easy to actually start loving yourself, taking care of yourself physically, spiritually, mentally, all of those things, and you will actually tap into this wonderful life.
Yes. And when you do it that way, I don't think you can have too much self-love. Because because with that definition and with that mind frame, you can look at something that is actually not a good trait about yourself.
Yeah.
And love yourself enough to actually work on that.
Yeah. There's been a few times where, whether I'm doing announcements or I'm on stage or something like that, and I'll say, I know I'm awesome.
Yeah.
But somebody like my wife, she will know that I will go to her and I will say, I know that I wasn't. And there's only one reason that I am.
Yes.
It's because I understand the transition that happened.
Right.
It's not, I'm not awesome because I'm awesome. I'm awesome because
Right.
I understand now.
Yes.
I have clarity of who I am, a purpose of who I am.
Right.
And he's still unveiling more and more of that package.
Yeah.
And he can do the same for you. He can do the
Right.
same for everyone.
Yes.
He has done it. It's just we have to step into it and
Right.
believe. So.
Yes. It's we're running the race.
Right.
We're not holding on to what was past. We're looking forward.
Right.
To what Jesus has done, right? Like, and that's what we can get stuck in.
Right.
Right? Is like we get stuck in the past, and yeah,
it's like those Mishka dolls. It's the dolls that are buried within each other.
Yeah.
It's like you open up the package and here's this Mishka doll, and then you open it up and underneath there's another one, and then there's another one, and as there's this revealing of who we are.
Yeah.
The more you actually fall more and more deeply in love with yourself, and it's so easy.
Right.
To love people.
Right.
It becomes very easy.
Right.
It's not an arduous task. It's not like, I can't stand that person.
Right.
but I gotta love them because that's the Christian thing to do.
Right.
Good luck with that.
Right.
It's not gonna work.
No.
Because most people can see right through that.
Yeah. Everyone can, I think.
Yeah.
Whether they realize it or not.
Right.
Because people, they have spirits and they have emotions.
Right.
And you can pick up on them whether or not you actually say it.
Yeah. That's good.
So, cool. Any more thoughts? Feel like that was a really good episode.
I think so too.
I thought it was pretty good. Hey, if you guys actually have topics or questions within this topic, self-love, we're going to do boundaries next week. But please comment if you would like us to hit some part of this, go ahead and comment. We'd love to interact that way. If you have like, hey, just any kind of feedback, any kind of like subjects you would want us to talk about, comment in the comment sections, hit the notification bell. That way, when there is a new post, you get the notification right away. I believe soon, if not now, we will be on podcasts in the Apple products. So you could go to Apple Podcasts, and we will be in Spotify as well. So if you can't go on YouTube, there is no excuse. It'll just be audio, obviously, so you won't get the majesty of our faces.
I am beautiful.
We are beautiful men. We're perfect just the way we are. Just kidding.
Oh, wow.
We're not. We just went through that.
I said I could lose a few pounds. There we go.
Yeah. But that's some exciting news because I know most of the time when I get to listen to a podcast, it is not in front of my television. It's usually on my treadmill, actually.
Right.
So just some more options, more freedom for you to be able to listen to us and join the conversation. So thanks for listening. And if you would like, you can donate. There's that link down at the bottom. And help us continue doing this. And, the heart of this isn't that Jesse and I just get here and have these cool conversations and wear cool headphones and talking to microphones. Honestly, probably, not my favorite thing. Fun fact, knew I should be doing podcasts for years and I just didn't do it because there's this whole podcast culture now. And it's kind of nauseating. I'm like, why do you think you should have a podcast?
Right.
Again, this whole self-love thing. Everyone deserves a podcast. I'm like, no, you don't. You actually don't.
No.
Your life doesn't. You don't. Right now, maybe go do something cool, and then we would listen to your podcast.
Right.
But right now, Jenny, you didn't do anything. I don't care. Anyway.
Right.
That's a whole tangent. So we're just doing this in order that, we only have so much time on Sunday. How can we disciple people more? How can we get together more? How can we go on a journey with each other more?
Right.
And this is such a cool way to do it. And so that is the heart behind all these podcasts, is to help all of us develop more, be more discipled, be more in community, in order that we're all growing closer and closer to how Jesus wants us to be.
Yeah, and on Sundays, if you have questions,
Yeah, come up to us.
come up to us, ask us if we
It'd be
offended.
so cool.
Yeah, like I said, don't run away from offense.
Yeah.
Please come. Trust me.
Yes.
I have pretty big shoulders. I can handle it, and I want to talk to you about
Yeah.
things because that's how we grow.
Right. Yeah. And it would be cool because then we would know if somebody's listening.
True, we're not just talking to ourselves.
We're not just talking to ourselves.
Which is okay too.
Yeah, that is okay. We would still do it if
Yeah,
nobody
we
listened.
still
Quite
have these
honestly.
conversations.
Yeah, we would still do it. All right. Enough of our ranting. We will see you next time. Thank you for listening, and hope to hear from you. See ya.